On the morning of July 18th, 1901, a 14-year-old boy named Willie, the son of Kels Nickell, was gunned down at the entrance gate of his family's homestead on the plains of Wyoming. Willie had been sent out to run an errand. He may have been wearing his father's hat and coat, and he was definitely riding his father's horse. Whoever pulled the trigger believed they were killing Kels. 2 shots were fired. An innocent life was ended. Willie's body was discovered the following morning by his younger brother. Welcome to Echoes of Us. I'm Jake, and today we continue the story of Kels Nickell. To understand how a family feud ended in tragedy, we need to rewind and introduce the man many believe to have pulled the trigger, Tom Horn. At this point in his life, Tom Horn was essentially a hired gun and range detective for the cattle barons of the Wyoming Territory. He had built his reputation years earlier as a civilian scout during the Apache Wars in Arizona. Through his service, Horn rose through the ranks and earned considerable respect for his valor and effectiveness while working alongside the Army. After leaving that life behind, Horn attempted to settle down and start a ranch in Arizona. That attempt was short-lived. His livestock was stolen by rustlers, an experience that hardened him and set him back on a violent path, one that would eventually lead him to Iron Mountain. Horn later found employment with John C. Coble as a range detective. The two men quickly developed a friendship. Coble trusted Horn, and Horn became an employee and a confidant. By May of 1901, tensions surrounding Kels had reached a breaking point. Kels made the controversial decision to sell his cattle and bring 3,000 sheep onto his homestead. In Wyoming at the time, sheep were more than just livestock. They were a provocation. This decision only added fuel to a feud that was already spiraling out of control. Kels knew exactly how his neighbors would react, but he continued anyway, seemingly to spite them. Because of his growing reputation in the area, and because of what he had done to John C. Coble, Horn was tasked with tracking and keeping a close watch on Kels. Horn began visiting nearby homesteads, interviewing residents, and gathering as much information on Kels as he could. With each conversation, the picture became clearer. Kels was not only disliked, he was seen as a problem. And then Willie was killed. A service for Willie was held on July 21st, where Kels stood at his son's graveside and swore he would avenge his death. He never got the opportunity. On August 4th, while conducting chores at his homestead, Kels was shot multiple times by an unknown gunman. He survived the attack, but had to be rushed to Cheyenne to receive medical attention. His shooting added a layer to an investigation that was already underway following the murder of his son. In January of 1902, Tom Horn gave what would become his alleged confession to Deputy Marshal Joe LaFleurs. Horn was quoted as saying, "That was the best shot I ever made, and the dirtiest trick I had ever done." With a confession in hand, LaFleurs sought a warrant for Horn's arrest. On January 13th, Tom Horn was jailed and awaited trial. The trial began on October 10th. Horn's longtime friend and employer, John C. Coble, hired several attorneys for his defense. More than 100 members of the Wyoming Stock Growers Association each contributed $1,000 towards Horn's legal defense. Despite the effort and money behind him, it was all in vain. On October 24th, the jury found Tom Horn guilty of the murder of Willie. Horn was sentenced to hang, and the sentence was carried out on November 20th, 1903. Kels requested permission to witness the execution, but the request was denied. He was, however, allowed to view Horn's body afterward. Historians and critics still debate whether Tom Horn was truly guilty of Willie's murder, or whether he took credit for it to add to his already fearsome reputation. Either way, he paid the ultimate price. What Kels did in the years following these events is not well documented. Perhaps, after years of bloodshed and conflict, he chose to live a quieter, more reserved life. What is known is that on October 13th, 1929, in Lee City, Kentucky, Kels passed away at the age of 74. It is unclear whether he returned to Kentucky permanently or was simply visiting his family. His body was sent back to Wyoming, where he was laid to rest in Lakeview Cemetery in Cheyenne, Wyoming. The story of Kels is not one of heroes and villains, but of escalation, of grudges left to grow, lines crossed, and consequences that could never be undone. What began as disputes over land and livestock ended in death, retaliation, and a cycle of violence that claimed both innocent and the notorious. In the end, Willie paid the highest price for a feud that was never his to bear. Tom Horn became a symbol of the lawlessness of the Old West, and Kels, the man at the center of it all, faded quietly into history. Every family has a story. Every story has a past, and some pasts refuse to stay buried. Thank you all for stopping by. Until next time.